Today on In Her Words, we're sitting down with Roma Roth, the creator of Virgin River and Sullivan's Crossing. She has a great lesson for a non-linear path to your career. She started out in anthropology, making a documentary for her dissertation, and ended up being the showrunner on two of the most binged shows on television. We hope you enjoy as much as we did. Thanks. So, Roma, thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to meet you. I have to do a shout out. My sister Heidi, I'm doing the shout out. I think she is the biggest Virgin River fan in the entire world. There'd probably be others that want to fight her for it, but I texted her this morning. I'm like, guess who I'm talking to today? She was like, stop it. Stop it. You have to tell her I'm the biggest fan in the world. She loves the show so much. It's hilarious.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, you have rabid fans for your shows. It is well, I think I want to get to the shows in a minute because I like to start with your history, but these are not lighthearted fans. These are serious fans that follow these shows. So it's that has to be fun.
Well, we're very lucky, yeah, and it's exciting, and I think it has to do with the fact that the audience for romance drama is pretty dedicated.
Well, and I think there's something about these, and I know there's been articles and you've talked about it in interviews too about kind of that it's romantic drama, but there's like a coziness to it, or maybe just a realness. I don't know. Maybe you can, you can picture yourself living in that place or being those people, or it's not so fantastical that you can't get there. It's just enough that it gets us. We escape. It's fantasy, but there's a little bit of I could get there. I could live there.
Yeah, I
I
think
get
it's
on that
it's that
horse.
wish fulfillment, right? That
Right.
everybody wants to be in a place where everybody likes you. I want to
I
go to that
saw
place
I
too.
saw somebody post the other day about Gilmore Girls, and I'm a crazy Gilmore Girl fan. My sister is. I mean, my daughter, everybody is. But it was like I think it's just that I want a town I can walk around in.
Hmm.
That was the ultimate fantasy. Is that if my Jeep broke down, I could just walk like Lorelai, and we can. None of us can do that. But yeah, I think it is that approachability of it, that simplicity, simpleness of it that makes it so nice. So you did not think you were going to be a filmmaker. It wasn't always your path. So we'd love to hear your story of how where you started, why you started even before, and then how you came into filmmaking.
Yeah, well, certainly not the traditional path. I didn't go to film school. I wanted to be Jane Goodall when I read, I forgot which book that I had read when I was 12, and I was all about going to Africa and studying chimpanzees. So I ended up going to anthropology and then doing a master's in primatology and becoming a behaviorist, and spent about 4 years doing that, and that was really enjoyable. And then during the course of that, they had invented, they being technology, had invented the handy cam, which was about, I think it was about this big, and not the size
Not
of
so
your
handy.
iPhone. Yeah, not so handy. But it made filmmaking a little bit more accessible. So I remember I had tried to convince my department to allow me to do my thesis as opposed to your traditional written thesis as a video documentary, and they said no. And in when you're doing data collection for behavior, you're just putting in like a one or a zero, a one if you saw the behavior, a zero if you didn't. And I kept thinking to myself, well, how is anybody going to be able to support whether or not somebody else's research was accurate? So I said, well, why don't I collect my data with the video? That way I could still do the traditional zero and ones and do the statistics to do the analysis. And then after that, I had hundreds, I think it was 900 hours of footage on bonobos, which were the chimpanzee that I was studying at the time. And I produced a documentary with my identical twin sister, actually. She helped me do the narration for it, and that was kind of the birth of this idea that you could really touch people in a more global way rather than writing in a journal that maybe a handful of scientists would read.
Was she still
And
a filmmaker?
yeah, she is. She's in
Okay.
Montreal, Canada. She's a
Was
filmmaker.
she was she a filmmaker at the time when you were
No,
studying anthropology?
no, she wasn't. So I don't.
Took
Yeah,
you both off path.
yeah, she had a different route, but I think she went to McGill and she took film, I think, as well. But she
Okay.
took film. I didn't. Yeah, but
So
that was
with
it. I
so you had the footage, and then did you finish your thesis?
I did. It took me
Right.
4 years because I got sidetracked. The Lonesome Dove, because I think you're supposed to finish it in two, but it took me four because Lonesome Dove, the series, came to town. I was in Calgary at the time, and I was a member of the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers, and they had a little posting on the bulletin board that said looking for assistant to the producer. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go and apply for that job. And I have long curly hair that takes way too much time to deal with. I remember I did the interview, and then I came home and I cut all my hair off. And my boyfriend at the time was like, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I can't get up at 6 in the morning to go to set if I have to deal with my hair." And he said, "But you didn't even get the job yet." And I said, "I know I have it." And
Oh my
they
gosh.
called me a couple days later and offered me the job. Thankfully,
And
otherwise I had short hair for nothing.
and you could be on time because you didn't have to deal with your hair.
But yeah,
And so then so did you made a documentary with your was your documentary for the thesis, or did you make that separate
no, they
from?
wouldn't accept it. So I had to do.
Okay.
I just felt like it was a waste to have 900 hours of footage, and not very many people knew what a bonobo was.
Uh-huh.
So we produced a documentary called The Uncommon Chimpanzee, which became this kind of a little phenomenon, even though I mean, it's got a time code and it's probably the least professional looking documentary, you could get. But the animal rights groups use it as to support the idea of animals having intellect, because I was
Oh, okay.
particularly studying communication and
Mhm.
gestural communication in bonobos and how they talk to each other with their hands.
Oh, interesting, interesting. What and so how was the experience on Lonesome Dove? I mean, that was a long running series, and
Yeah, well, I mean, not perfect. I knew nothing about film, like zero.
okay.
Just that I wanted to get into it. And so
Mhm.
that's probably not the job you want to get as your first job as assistant producer because they really rely on you. So I was really good at getting coffee and tea, but I had no idea what a production report was or a call sheet. And so I didn't last in that position too long. But then instead of allowing that to dissuade me for what I wanted to do, I ended up going back on set and working my way up from a locations PA all the way to second AD at the time. So
And how I know the filmmaking world and production world is so robust in Canada now. Huge. Was it how's it was it then? Were there a lot of
not
I mean,
really. I mean,
Lonesome Dove was
they were
going.
doing some TV movies
Uh-huh.
for Hallmark, but it was the old Hallmark. It was the Hallmark originals that were owned by the Hallmark family, I think.
Yes,
So
yes.
their budgets were like, I think five times at least of what they are these days. Um, and we had Canadian shows, but it wasn't. I don't think the that kind of runaway production it wasn't as
Yeah.
broad as it is these days.
So as you kept bump moving around, did you just love it even more as you kept doing different jobs and learning more about production and that side of the industry? What were there, how, was it your perseverance? Were there people that helped you that, cause it's a tough industry to just jump into one day because, that you decide you love it.
Well, no, nobody helped me. And I wanted to be a producer, so none of those jobs actually fulfilled the requirement. But what they did allow me to do is to understand filmmaking and understand the different positions and have a really broad knowledge base of what the various departments did and where they could be wasting money or not wasting money, which I think is important for a producer to know. And then from there, I ended up, because I was living in Canada, I ended up moving to the States through a scholarship that I got from Calgary government, Alberta Heritage, I think it was, for
Mhm.
people who are quote unquote extraordinary in the arts and sciences. I don't even know. It was just, there's a lot of free money in Canada. So I was like,
And
how
I'll
do I
take
how
it.
can I cover
Extraordinary.
this? Yeah. So I remember, and it wasn't even designed for film at all. It was
Oh, okay.
completely for something else. So I managed to get an internship to go work in with Alliance in the States
Oh,
in
okay.
Los Angeles, and
Hmm.
that was kind of how well, one of the I had to put it on hold because as a graduate student, I had zero money left after I graduated. But I ended up working as a third AD, so I was working with the talent and an actress I was working with on a show in Montreal asked me to come visit her in the States. And then she was actually, when I say nobody helped me, that's completely untrue because Jane March, the actress, was extremely generous and let me stay at her house in the Hollywood Hills while I did my internship, which was really nice.
Okay. Oh,
So I have to say there was that one person that did for sure help me.
and starting out in anthropology and creating this documentary and then film, how are you still today interested in different genres? Are you still interested in documentaries, and you've done episodic and doing and film? How do you feel about all of the kind of the different genres and the different platforms? Do you have favorites? Are you still, do you like to work in all of them?
I just like telling stories and I like touching people in an emotional way. And so it doesn't matter if it would be a horror movie or a thriller or a drama or a romance show. For me, the important thing is to really connect with the audience and help tell the story that really is meaningful to people and
Mhm.
maybe has an ability to change their lives in some way, even if it's just in an entertainment way and getting them um, out of their head for a little bit. So I think romance dramas I ended up getting into because I felt that we were going back a little bit to the 80s. I felt that there was an awful 80s, 90s, I guess. There was so much hardship when you turn on your news between climate change and the various political dramas that are playing out
Mhm.
currently. So I felt, and that was pre-COVID, and I had done a lot of television movies prior to going to series, but I really wanted to make the transition to series. And I remember I had a couple of people say that, well, why don't you move earlier into series? You should just get away from the TV movies. But I like TV movies, and there's a really good audience for them. But to get to series, I was a little bit intimidated because how do you go from making TV movies and then you've been stigmatized a little bit with regards to what type of programming you produce, and the more of them you make, then the less likely it is to make a transition to series. So for me, I thought, well, nobody knows who Roma Roth is, so I'll find an IP that has an audience, and
Mhm.
I believe that mm, pretty well any channel or platform is looking for eyeballs. And if you can bring them a program that has the ability to drive those eyeballs to their platform, they're going to want to make it. So I was right. I sold the show to Netflix, and the rest is sort of history.
Yeah, no, great,
Recently.
successful history. How did you come upon the series of books? And was it something that somebody brought to you that you read that for Virgin River first?
Well, I remember telling my husband, who's my business partner, and I said to him, I don't want to do TV movies. Let's move into series. And
Mhm.
he was like, how are we going to pay the mortgage? If you're going to just make that
First things
randomly,
first.
how are you going to do that? Yeah. And I said, well, I want to take some time off and give me 6 months to develop a show. And he said, okay, because he's I'm a very, very lucky woman to have one of I think the world's most supportive husbands
Nice.
and business partners. And so he said, so anyway, I thought I would be drinking, champagne in the backyard or coffee or tea and leisurely looking through IP, but I'm an incredibly driven human being, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I would get up and I would start from 7 a.m. and I would go till probably 9 or 10 at night, and I would just comb the internet looking for that perfect, IP that would connect with me. And I was specifically looking for an intellectual property and a book that would have a lot of emotion and had already had kind of a built-in audience. And so
Mhm.
eventually I came across Robin Carr, and there had been which I didn't know at the time, I don't think, but there was a master's thesis that was written about her, which is kind of coming full circle, isn't it?
Right, right.
Not
That's
by me,
amazing.
not by me, by somebody else, and about how her books really connect with people. And after I'd optioned the books, it turned out that she was also on HarperCollins' top 200 books of over the last 200 years. So she had interesting bedfellows in the literary world, such as the Bible, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the Thornbirds. And then there was her, and about, I would say probably 98% of the books that were on the list out of the 200 had already been turned into shows. But I believe that her books hadn't been because romance is like a dirty little secret, that people, certain executives maybe have
Oh,
decided that
right. They
romance
think it's
doesn't
only
sell.
the audience is small, or
Yeah,
that it's for, dumb women who stay at home and don't,
exactly.
it's just so, just couldn't be more wrong of the people that I know
Exactly.
that watch,
Yeah.
watch
Well,
it obviously millions.
it's funny because I have a lot of friends who are doctors and surgeons, women, and they all read romance novels. So I think that maybe the male executives didn't really understand who the audience, is for that genre.
Right, right. That's interesting. So as you decided to make this transition, and again, you just keep talking, all I keep thinking of is, perseverance, and you didn't come from a film family or a Hollywood family, and it wasn't your first, and you're finding your way. Where do you think that comes from? What is that in you that is like, I'm going to go for, I'm gonna, obviously, even if you'd stayed with anthropology, getting your master, doing a master's thesis and going through that, that's hard work. And then moving into a completely different career, changing countries, where do you think that kind of drive comes from? That's very, very interesting.
I like not to limit myself, and I think that if we are trying to guide people on how they can accomplish things, I think it's important not to put limits on yourself. And it's just been instinctive and natural to me, and maybe I'm just crazy, I don't know. But I just feel like if there's something I want to do, I'm just going to go and do it. And the worst thing you can tell me is that I can't do something, because as soon as you tell me that, instead of becoming discouraged, I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's, I think, how Sullivan's Crossing came to be as well, because I had.
How have you had any setbacks that, where you really did have to kind of have a talk with yourself and be like, okay, this is a big one, but I'm going through that. I think that's such a helpful lesson to people that are like, you're everybody's going to have setbacks, everybody. But how do you
But
talk to
what's a
yourself?
setback? A setback is every negative experience you have in life has a positive message, in the sense that you can learn something
Hmm.
from it.
Hmm.
And failing, there's an, even though I'm probably one of the people who really hates to fail and takes that very personally, but the word failure, we say it's failure, but is it failure because as long as you're taking something from it as you're moving forward, it's not really a failure. So I've trusted the wrong people. I've been, never trust somebody who says they don't sign a piece of paper because you can trust them. Like, I mean, I don't know how
Hmm.
many, at least 3 times in my life, people make me feel like I was insulting them somehow because I wasn't trusting them, and then it didn't have the contract, and then you get, you know, you find out that you were right. So I think, sure, I had setbacks. I'm trying to think of things that were specific. It's funny. I don't really dwell on the negative. So when things happen, I don't sit there and go, "Woe is me." I allow myself a day or maybe two to cry and to lick my wounds, and then
Yeah.
after that, I just pull my socks up and get back out there. So I think, you know, I can't think of a specific. I mean, there's been so many different things that happened to me that probably I don't necessarily need to get into here,
Yeah,
but
but you mean like
that was
projects that you wanted that you didn't get, or something that it sounds like you were like, no,
I'm not
I'm
an
going
overnight
to,
success.
right.
I'm 55 years old,
Yeah.
and although this filter is doing a really nice job, but I'm 55 years old. I'm not an overnight success. I spent, I would say, 30 up until my 30s. I was had zero money, and I remember. Okay, so I remember coming with a certain amount of money to the States. And saying once I got down to $3,000, which was a lot for me that back then, I was going to go home.
Mm,
And I remember I got down to $1,000, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to stay. And I was walking by a homeless guy, and I thought to myself, I gave him a substantial amount of money because I felt that he needed it more than I did, that I'd still be able to make more, and he obviously couldn't.
means more to him. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I could have gone home, and I think probably 99% of people would have gone home at that point because I couldn't find a way to break into the industry. I didn't know anybody. I couldn't afford to do a free internship, you got to pay your rent.
Right.
Um, and eventually, I was down to I think I had like maybe $200 left in the bank. And I met with somebody. I was trying to sell a screenplay. At the time I had optioned a couple of screenplays for like $1 or something. And there was one called The Toyman Killer. It got made years and years later, but that was the one that started this. And I remember trying to sell it. I pitched it to somebody and they said they loved it and they wanted to buy it for like very little money. And I said, well, that's not fair because if you give me that amount of money, I can't give the person who wrote the screenplay any money. And they said, well, you sound like a manager. You don't sound like a producer. So I've always wanted to open up a management company. Would you like to open one with me? And but I never let them know that I was down to like my last $200.
Right. Right.
And eventually I ended up opening a management company with this person, which kind of kept me here longer in the States. And then ultimately, from there, I started representing writers and directors, having
Mhm.
access to their scripts,
Mhm.
and kind of the big lesson for me was I thought that this particular person was going to be somebody who would help me with my career and support me emotionally and help me with contacts, um, and to achieve my dream of becoming a producer. And there goes that light. And I turns out that they didn't actually want to help me. They kept telling me don't be a producer, it's too difficult. And um, I finally had this kind of epiphany where I realized that that person wasn't any smarter than I was. And when I had that epiphany, it changed my life because as soon as
Mhm.
I realized that they were not trying to be helpful, they were trying to keep me from
Mhm.
accomplishing my dream. I ended up knocking on doors, and just putting myself out there. And I sold my first show to Lifetime, and that was kind of the trajectory for me. But I think the big message for twice in my life that I had to learn was that you can't let people convince you that you can't do something or you shouldn't do something.
Mhm.
You should if it's something you want to do, just go after it. And it's persistence. I mean, I got here in my 20s, and it took about 10 years before I ended up um, actually making my first show. But if I had given up at any point, that would have been the end of it.
Right. Right. You wouldn't have gone back then. No, that's interesting too. People that present themselves as helping you and introducing you, and when you take a step back, they're not supporting any of your dreams. They keep shifting it to their opinion or their idea or their of where you should be. I think that is amazing advice, because I think we've all run into those people that are, I'll help you, I'll help you, I'll help you, and the constant message, oh no, you don't want to do that, oh no, you don't want to do that, whether they say it's too hard or they say you can't. Subtly the message is you can't do, I don't believe you can do that, or I don't
Well,
want you to do
I
that,
find
I
it
keep
funny
you in
because
your
a lot of the
box.
symposiums that you go to,
Yeah,
and the film conferences, I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell you how you actually can do something. You go and pay $100 and you hear a panel of people tell you how hard it is.
right, that what you can't. Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, and that's, we always say at our workshops and different things is the goal, as everybody's presenting and preparing, is like the goal is everybody in the audience has to take something away that moves them up and out, that moves them, like what have you done that will help them, that will help somebody else either skip a mistake, which we always love, or that, like, that's what I need to do, and move out. And I think that's, that is such great advice, and especially for a young person. I mean, you were in a new country, you were new to the industry. I mean, somebody that's like, I'll connect you, I'll help you, I'll do this, and constantly telling you, no, or constantly telling you, that, that you shouldn't do something is, yeah, that's it. And as a young, new person to an industry or in any business, it's hard to realize, I guess, and because you do have to be trusting for, to someone. That's really interesting. So how did so you decided you were going to move to episodic. You're reading for the IPAs. The IPs. You come across Virgin River, and how hard was it to make that partnership and to get those rights, and tell us about how you got to Netflix, and that kind of that process.
well, so initially when I contacted Liza Dawson, who was the lit agent for Robin Carr, she said, why would we give it to you? In a nice way. She was very
Yeah,
polite and lovely.
yeah.
But and because they had seen I'd done a bunch of TV movies, but that's not what they wanted with the IP. And I
Have they
had,
turned down offers before?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know how many, but I know they must have. And they were right. I mean, why would they trust me with their IP to turn it into a television series, particularly since authors are extremely protective of their brand, right? And
Mhm.
she's a big brand. So it was kind of happenstance, or what do you call it, kismet. I had approached Harlequin years earlier to do kind of a slate deal with A&E Networks, and I'd met a gentleman by the name of Craig Swinwood, who's the president of HarperCollins Canada and Harlequin.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had an acquaintanceship with him, and so when I was talking to Liza, I said, well, would it be okay if I gave you Craig Swinwood's name as a reference? And it obviously he publishes all of Robin's books, so that worked well.
That's a great connection.
Yeah, and again, it was one of those things that, I'm a good when you put dots together, or so it was something from 5, 6 years earlier, um, and connecting those dots in order to get where I needed to be. And of course, that certainly helped that she did call him and he gave me a good reference and said that it would be a good partnership. And so they allowed me to option um, Virgin River. And in fact, I've optioned 3 book series
Oh,
from
I was just going to ask if there were. I mean, the more, so Sullivan's Crossing is her source too, as well.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
there's a book series called Thunder Point that I optioned as well.
and where is that in? Well, we'll get to new projects in a minute. So so was Netflix? When did Netflix become involved?
So I had meetings with various executives there, just lower kind of echelon people, knocked on the
Mhm.
door. Wasn't really getting anywhere, and that's just basically going to IMDb and figuring out who the executives are. And
Wow,
I
you
had,
really were like boots on the ground, with getting this made.
yeah, well, I kind of felt that I wanted to pitch them a show they didn't have. Everybody was pitching them the same genre that they had: thrillers,
Mhm.
psychological thrillers. Um, So I looked up a gentleman by the name of Larry Tans, who does not work in the same division anymore. And I had sent him an email, and I literally, I kind of condensed everything down to a paragraph about this big, and I put all the numbers up top: 35 million copies sold, or was
Mhm.
sorry, 27 million copies sold in 35 different countries, and I was doing it more of a marketing tool, and then a sentence of what the show was actually about. And he set up in a meeting. He said, I remember the email. It was, "Sounds interesting. Let me put you in touch with a new executive that came into Netflix." And I went for lunch, pitched the show, and that was it. And it was a lot. I mean, it was surprisingly easy after 30 years of sweat.
There's your overnight success after
It
30
was.
years.
It was.
Did you pitch any other streamers or network, or was Netflix your
No, I
first
wanted to go to
choice?
Netflix. I really wanted to do the show with
Okay.
Netflix. I wanted it to have a footprint in over 60, whatever it is, 69 countries.
Right, right.
Because they drop everything very all at once, and I
Mhm,
knew I just felt that that was the right platform for me and for the show, and I believe I
mhm.
was right about that.
Absolutely, you were right about that. What and then tell us about putting putting the team together. How putting the production team together, the talent together. How was that? And were you the final vote? How involved was Robin, or was the her literary agent, that side of things? How was that process? Because
Well, no,
the casting is just, oh, I
oh,
mean.
thanks. I'm super picky about casting. The the Robin Carr is a lovely human being to work with, and she gives me carte blanche on the material. I try and stick to.
Mhm,
Well, her books, each one of them is a standalone. Um,
mhm.
Not really. I mean, there is connectivity in them with regards to ongoing characters, but each one's a separate romance with a different
Right,
couple.
right.
So we actually took the first book and turned that into like the main couple. Um, and so I'm just trying to think. With casting, I'm really picky about casting because I know that it's additive to the show. I mean, if
Mhm.
you can put in cast that draws an audience in addition to the books that have an audience, that's helpful. So Martin was somebody who caught my eye from Grey's Anatomy, and Alexandra was on. She was on American Horror Story originally. She played the maid. You might not
Mhm.
recognize her from there because she had, like, I think, really deep red hair. And she was also on This Is Us, but only in, I think, one episode, I think, at the time.
Okay.
So um, Netflix obviously we had a list of people that they have some sort of algorithms as to, but you get like 15 pages of actors, and then you're trying to figure out which one is the one that's going to um, be right for the role, not just for drawing an audience. And so basically, that's how that came to be. And I was really looking for somebody to play Doc that had a charisma to them. And I'd seen Heart of Dixie, and
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect in that. So I ended up thinking, similar role, but he
Yeah.
was really good at it. So who cares? So we put him in that.
So
Um,
what about the production team, were they people that you'd worked with before? Do you
No,
keep your
no,
same
we
team
shot in
together, or?
it was Vancouver, so I had to find a
Oh, okay.
team in Vancouver, which is where we're shooting, and I found a gentleman by the name of Ian Hay, who was the line producer that I brought on. Um,
And has that team
Years
stayed
ago.
together through the
Yeah,
seasons now?
it's the same team.
There's been so many things that have come and gone, I feel like every day in the trades there's, and not so much with Netflix, but definitely on different streamers, there's something that got canceled that's such a surprise, and something that isn't being renewed that's such a surprise. What is it that you think with Virgin River that has that just keeps it so at the top of the charts, and in Netflix hearts, in the consumers hearts? What is it about it that you think is setting it so apart? People were dying for this next season to come. Oh my gosh.
I think that there's an addictive quality to it with regards to, if you create characters that are compelling and connect with an audience. They're and you fall in love with those characters in the
Mhm.
first season, then you're going to go on the journey with them because you need to see what happens to them. And making, I really wanted to do a show both with the Virgin River and Sullivan's. I like doing shows which feel um, aspirational but real,
Mhm.
and have
Mhm.
that ability that you feel you can connect with your own emotions, but in a safe place through a third person, which is like another person that would be the character. So you don't have to feel you can go on an emotional journey, but not it's not too personal, even if there
Right.
are things that are reminding you of your personal journey. So I think having real experiences that people can in the storyline that people can connect with, as well as kind of realistic characters. I think that's what I mean. Soap operas are built on that, except that they end up getting fantastical, but as you go through the season, because you need to keep upping the drama. But so I think that's why people like 90210 and Melrose Place and uh, everything from Hill Street Blues, if you remember that, to
Oh, sure.
yeah, all those shows. It's just shows about people.
Right.
Cheers, you know.
Okay, so then tell us about Sullivan's Crossing and wanting to, how many projects do you want going on at the same time, and similar, and how tell us about that process of the decision to launch, and again, super successful, beloved characters and actors and actresses. Tell us about that, deciding to take on that another project like this, but with a different platform, not with Netflix.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd done the Netflix one, so I wanted to try something different, and I wanted to create a show that was Canadian content, which means that it's an actual Canadian show.
Mhm.
It was more, it's called a service production, Virgin River, where you shoot in Canada, but um, you're not actually a Canadian content show because it's a US show that's filming in Canada. So
Okay.
I wanted to do a show that was as successful in Canada, and hopefully, the rest of the world, that was a Canadian content show because I'm a Canadian producer at heart. So I also was determined to do it again because people kept telling me that setting up a series straight to series is, and an order, a straight to series order, is unheard of and not normal. And I said, well, I didn't, I like, again, I don't limit myself, and I don't kind of approach things in the way that's the way you're supposed to do it. I just
Mhm.
approach it the way I want to do it, or think that it's more effective. And I didn't like that people were telling me that it was a fluke. So I said I was going to set up the second series, but this time I was going to also be the quote unquote showrunner as opposed to just the executive producer on it, and I was going to write the show. So I did that.
Yeah, tell people telling you can't do something goes back to that
Yeah.
that so that I mean yeah, that has to, it's obviously so successful. People are you have to be so busy. What Tell us kind of a day in the life. What are you, how do you relax? Do you relax? Do you want to relax? What do you like to watch? What's kind of your decompression? How do you kind of escape from those kind of things in your
Well,
day to day?
I love to watch all sorts of genre television series,
Mhm.
movies. I like mafia movies. I like serial killer movies. I like movies about like Born Free and more animal related movies. But do I relax? No, because I'm a driven human being, and so I mean, if you looked at the daily life in the last 7 months where I've been show running Sullivan's, it's been a lot of getting up at 6 a.m. and going to bed at, you know, 2 a.m.
Oh.
So they're long, long hours.
And can the production schedules, are you able to control that, and how they'll work together? And then you have another. I want to ask you what's coming next, but how will you balance all of that scheduling? Will they overlap at all?
Well, I mean, Virgin River is kind of running on its
Okay.
own now. So I've stepped away from that to come and do Sullivan's.
Okay.
So it's still I'm still executive producing, but as not on a day-to-day level, and I'm working on Sullivan's as a showrunner and executive producer. Um, Primarily right now, and then developing the other shows that we're doing as well. So it's a lot of juggling.
Mhm.
I'm also always in development and looking for IP. So in my free 5 minutes, I'm I don't do a lot of social media kind of postings. I do a lot of when I'm on my computer, I'm either working, writing, or looking for IP, or sending out emails to push the IP that we have and set it up. So we're working with a number of, I think pretty sensational authors with a big audience base, and are hoping to be able to develop a lot more of those shows. So I wanted this past year was all about proving that I could run a show as a writer and write the screenplays,
Mhm.
which was I'm pretty shocked actually that it worked out.
Oh my God, that's a huge success. Do you enjoy? I mean, I know that came from an original from a book, but writing your do you write your own complete you know your own projects as well? Are you doing that as well, where it's your own project from scratch?
I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure everything I've done. No, that's not true. I mean, all the TV movies were origin ideas that I originated and then
Mhm.
developed, and then a lot of my co-wrote as well. So those were all original ideas. For the series side of things, though, it's been pretty much intellectual property driven. So we're working with Debbie McComber. We're working with uh, completely forgetting people's names now. Mary Higgins Clark, and who else are we working with? Another Robin Carr novel, or a series that we're doing, and David Morrell, who created the character of Rambo. We're working with him
Do
as
you like
well.
doing both? Do you like having the original and then working with others' IP?
Yeah, but there's a lot of original that goes into the development of the IP, because
Yeah, you're writing and
you
yeah,
have to create the characters when you're looking at the novels. I mean, there's a certain amount of backstory, but there's also, the book is like this. And so people are getting married and having babies by the end of it. So you need to
right,
really slow down the story and fill in all the blanks. So I think, there's still a lot of original in there. So
right, right.
it's not like, I don't feel that they're any different really,
Hmm.
other than you have a nice starting point when
Right,
you're
right. You
organized.
have no, that's interesting. And what about the kind of going back to your do you see yourself doing a documentary ever again? Do you see yourself doing going back to TV movies or theatrical release, just feature films? Do you leave yourself open to all of those pieces too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I haven't done is a feature film, so that's definitely on my list. And the reality show is on my
Oh,
list as
oh,
well.
really? Interesting. What's your topic for your reality show?
Something with love in it, but different than I think what's already out there. Again, I do a lot of research before I develop something, because what I don't want
Uh,
to do is develop something that's already out there.
right, right.
But something that I think a lot of the really successful reality shows, again, connect on an emotional level with their audience. So that's kind of the same thing. I'd like to do that as well. And maybe when I first came to LA, I wanted to do a feature film like Born Free, and I'm still interested in maybe coming
Mhm.
full circle and doing something that involves. And there's a book that I had optioned when I was in my early 20s, that I've always wanted to adapt, and it's kind of like Born Free but without lions. It's got chimps in it.
Oh, back to your
Yeah.
roots. So we're almost out of time, but I want to hear. So we have Virgin River that the new season's on, and everyone's loved it. We have Sullivan's Crossing that's on now on CW and Hulu, and then tell us what's coming next, and what's coming next that already has dates and time and schedules, and then can you tell us anything else you're working on?
When you say coming next, do you mean like season two of Sullivan's Crossing
Yeah, do you
or
have season 2 set? Do you have is Thunder, what was is
Thunder
that
Point? Yeah, no,
the
Thunder
Thunder
Point's
Point
not set up yet,
schedule?
but I believe it would be soon to be. And we have another series that we're developing called Bourbon Kings. Um,
Oh, wait, have I heard of that?
well,
Is that a book?
it was a book series that was optioned by one of the studios. I can't remember off the top of my head which one, and they ended up letting the option underlying rights expire. So I picked it
Uh-huh.
up, and it's set in the world of the bourbon industry, kind of like a contemporary upstairs, downstairs epic romance drama series with a lot of
Mm,
intrigue.
very
And then
interesting.
we have another book series by Debbie Maycomber called Heart of Texas, which is again kind of like I
Oh,
would say if you took Thorn Birds and set it in Texas on a cattle ranch. Um, and also family epic drama,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
softer version of Yellowstone, maybe.
Okay,
What
okay.
else do we have going on? And then we've got and I'm blanking on this one. Horrible. I'm blanking on this one author's name. That's driving me crazy. Um, sorry, Hollywood Kids, which is I'm hoping to develop as a kind of a older contemporary 90210
Oh, interesting. Okay.
to try and breathe life into something like that again. So we've got,
Oh,
and then
cool.
these seven Mary Higgins Clark books that are kind of like a wheelhouse mystery series that we're looking
Yes, yes.
doing
I'm
as
with you. I love the mysteries and the true crime and the that those are the ones that I keep going. I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna watch something new, and I just keep going back to
well.
the I don't know if you've watched it now, but Murder at the End of the World
Yeah, yeah.
on Hulu right now. It's oh so good. It's my current recommend if you need you have 3 minutes in your day. I know, but if you find an hour here and there, but it's a good one too of that mystery true crime genre.
Well, we're currently wrapping up the season two of Sullivan's Crossing, so I'm looking forward to getting home. I've been out here for quite a long time, and
Yeah,
in Halifax, actually, where we're in Nova Scotia, where we're filming. Um, and that was a pre-buy by the CW, so which was great. So because we, originally the show was for CTV and Bell in partnership with Fremantle, who was our foreign
okay.
international distribution company, and they sold it to CW. So it's been exciting to see the success of it and to be able to do second season. So.
Yeah,
Um,
not only did you prove him wrong that you could do it all, then it got picked up for a second season. So that's like a
yes,
double
well,
a
it's
double proving your point.
it's not to boast, but and I'm not a boastful person, but it became the highest rated show in 3 years in Canada, and then it's been doing I think it was number one on CW. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
still there or not. I think it is. Um, so I haven't had time to stop and smell the roses. That's the only negative part
mhm.
of being so busy. But it's interesting.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I always ask the question of, working women and what in our industry of, what do you do to relax or what to do? And so many people kind of come back, and I'm the same way. It's like I love what I do, so it doesn't, and of course you do. You want to get home and you want to have some, decompression time, but it's like I love what I do, and and one of the executives I was talking to, she works with Heartbeat, Kevin Hart's company, and she said, I just feel like everything I'm doing is so inquisitive towards my job that I love. Like you see a story out there, you're reading a book, you meet someone and hear their story, or you get a and it's always kind of, it's always kind of percolating that you're working, and but it's because we love what we do, and in creating, it's never. I don't. I we still have not spoken to anyone that's, filmmaker, television, sports journalism, some that is like, oh, I do my work and I cut it off and I go home at 5, because when you love what you do, you always are working and creating and thinking
Exactly.
and and coming up with, ideas, like you said, connecting the dots and, what could be interesting and come of that. So I love that.
Yeah, I think you have to love it. Otherwise, you can't be successful at it because it does take a lot of perseverance to get to where you want to be. And I remember early back before I sold my first television movie, and I was sharing a really tiny office that was in our house, and it was me in the litter box, you know, for my cat. And I remember bursting into tears, and my husband was in foreign distribution at the time, and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh my God, I think I'm the hardest working person in Hollywood, and I can't, I can't get there, you know."
Mhm.
And he said, "Just, I believe in you. Just keep going, you know." And that is, pretty well the advice I think I would give anybody if you want to be able to accomplish what you want. But you have to love it, otherwise you will give up.
Yep, you have to love it or you will. Well, Roma, thank you so much for your time today, and I know how busy you are and taking the time to talk with us. We love your projects. My sister's going to be so excited, but it's just really nice to meet you and to hear your story. And I know your story's going to be it's going to be helpful. It's educational and it's inspirational, and when that underlying message is love what you do and persevere. That's just a great message for our audience. So thank you for your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.